The rock world woke up to a devastating headline. Brent Hinds, the former guitarist of Mastodon, is dead at 51. Fans could hardly believe it. Brent wasn't just a musician. He was a force of nature. Known for his wild guitar riffs, tattooed appearance, and unpredictable personality, he gave Mastodon its unmistakable edge. But now, silence. The man who helped shape one of the most powerful bands in modern metal is gone. When the news first spread across social media, many fans thought it was a hoax. How could someone so full of life suddenly be gone? But as official statements rolled in, the truth became impossible to deny. Brent Hinds had passed away, leaving behind a legacy of music that changed the metal scene forever. The timing of his death shocked even more. Brent had been quiet in recent years after stepping away from Mastodon, but every once in a while, fans caught glimpses of him jamming, smiling, and living life his own way. That's why this news cut deep. It felt like we had been robbed of a musician who still had so much left to give. But Brent's story isn't only about his death, it's about his life, his struggles, his genius, and his unforgettable presence on stage. And to understand why his loss hurts so much, we need to rewind to the very beginning of his journey. Brent Hinds was born in Alabama, a place far removed from the heavy metal stages he would one day dominate. As a kid, he was restless and rebellious. The guitar became his escape, a tool to channel all his chaos into something beautiful. He didn't come from wealth, nor did he have a clear path laid out for him, but what he had was raw hunger, an unstoppable need to play. Unlike many polished guitarists, Brent's style was dirty, unpredictable, and full of emotion. He never cared about fitting into neat boxes. While others practiced scales, Brent was out there bending strings in ways no one else dare. His early bands were rough, but they gave him the confidence to carve out his own identity. Friends described him as both hilarious and intense. One moment he'd be cracking jokes, the next he'd be locked into a riff that could shake the walls. He wasn't just learning music, he was living it, and slowly his reputation grew. By the late 90s, Brent had moved to Atlanta, where he crossed paths with musicians who would soon become his brothers in arms. Together, they would create something that felt larger than life, something called Mastodon. In 2000, Brent Hinds, along with Troy Sanders, Bill Kelleher, and Bran Daylor, formed Mastodon. From the start, the band was different. Heavy, yes, but not just heavy. They were weird, technical, and deeply creative. Brent's guitar work became the band's heartbeat. His riffs combined sludge, prog, and southern rock in ways no one had ever heard before. Their debut album, Remission, hit like a storm. But it was Leviathan, a concept album about Moby Dick, that turned Mastodon into underground legends. Brent's guitar screamed with fury, yet carried melody. He wasn't just playing notes, he was telling stories. On stage, Brent was electric. He wore his tattoos like armor, his cowboy hats like a crown, and his grin like a challenge. Fans loved his unpredictability. You never knew if he'd play flawlessly or stumble in chaos. But either way, it was pure Brent Hinds. Critics hailed him as one of the most original guitarists in metal. But what people didn't always see was how much of himself he poured into the music. Behind the wild energy was a man fighting personal battles, using every riff as a release. As Mastodon grew, so did Brent's fame. Albums like Blood Mountain and Crack the Skye pushed the band to new heights. Suddenly, they weren't just an underground secret, they were Grammy nominees, touring the world, sharing stages with legends like Metallica, Slayer, and Iron Maiden. For Brent, it was surreal. He had gone from small clubs in Alabama to arenas packed with screaming fans. Yet fame didn't change him much. He still cracked dirty jokes, drank hard, and played even harder. His personality was larger than life, sometimes reckless, always authentic. But with fame came pressure. Endless touring took a toll. Brent's unpredictable lifestyle sometimes clashed with the structured demands of being in a globally known band. Still, When he picked up a guitar, all of that vanished. The stage was where he truly belonged. By this point, Brent had cemented his reputation. He wasn't just another guitarist. He was the guitarist. The one fans pointed to and said, "That guy is different." And he was. But even as Mastodon soared higher, cracks were starting to show in Brent's journey. Fame, success, and personal struggles began to pull him in different directions. Brent Hinds was as wild off stage as he was on it. Stories of his antics became legendary. From drunken fights to outrageous interviews, he lived on the edge. Some fans adored him for it. Others worried it was a ticking time bomb. He spoke openly about his struggles with fame and how much he hated the business side of music. For Brent, playing guitar was pure joy, but dealing with labels, tours, and expectations, that was torture. He often clashed with the industry, and sometimes even with his bandmates. Still, Brent wasn't just a chaos machine. He was deeply emotional, often using humor to mask pain. He carried scars, both physical and mental, and music became his therapy. Every Mastodon song had pieces of Brent's soul hidden in its riffs. This duality, wild man on one side, vulnerable artist on the other, made him both loved and misunderstood. He didn't fit into neat categories. He wasn't trying to be a role model. He was just Brent, raw and unfiltered. But living life that way comes with consequence. Yes, and slowly, those consequences began to catch up with him. By the late 2010s, rumors of tension in Mastodon grew louder. Brent was often missing from interviews, skipping appearances, or giving brutally honest comments about the band. While fans debated online, the truth was simple. Brent had grown tired. He loved the music, but he hated the machine. In one interview, he admitted he never wanted to be in a big band. He just wanted to play guitar. That honesty shocked fans, but also made sense. Brent had never been one to hide his feelings. Eventually, Brent stepped back. While Mastodon carried on, his absence left a hole. The band was still incredible, but fans knew something was missing. Brent wasn't just a guitarist. He was the wild heart of Mastodon. For Brent, leaving gave him peace. He started focusing on side projects, jamming with friends, and living life on his own terms. He was no longer bound by schedules or contracts. He was finally free. But freedom also meant less stability. Without the structure of a band, Brent drifted. Still, his talent never faded. Every time he picked up a guitar, the fire was still there. Outside Mastodon, Brent stayed busy. He jammed with side projects like Fiend Without a Face and West End Motel, showcasing his love for mixing genres. Unlike the polished metal of Mastodon, these projects were raw, messy, and fun. They showed another side of Brent, his love for humor, experimentation, and just making noise. He also made guest appearances with other bands, always bringing his unpredictable style. Fans never knew what he'd do next, but they knew it would sound like Brent. His guitar tone was unmistakable, his energy unmatched. Away from music, Brent embraced a simple, rebellious life. He loved motorcycles, tattoos, and the freedom of being outside the spotlight. While other rock stars chased fame, Brent seemed to run from it. He stayed connected with fans, often spotted at shows, bars, or just hanging around. He wasn't a distant rock god. He was approachable, funny, and real. Fans loved him for that. Still, under the surface, there were signs of wear. Years of hard living had taken a toll. Brent carried his struggles quietly, but those close to him knew the weight he carried. In the months leading up to his death, Brent seemed quieter. He still played music, still connected with fans, but something felt different. Some friends say he appeared reflective, as if looking back more than looking forward. He wasn't touring, wasn't chasing fame. Instead, he seemed to enjoy smaller moments, jamming with friends, riding his bike, sharing laughs. For those who knew him, it was bittersweet. He still had the spark, but there was also a sense of winding down. When the news of his death came, It felt sudden, too soon. 51 is not old, especially for a musician with so much left to share. But Brent's body and spirit had been through battles most of us can't imagine. His passing left a hole, not just in Mastodon's legacy, but in the entire metal community. Because Brent wasn't just another musician, he was unique, a soul who burned bright, even if it burned too fast. And though his final days may remain private, one truth remains clear. Brent lived life his way, until the very end. Brent Hinds will be remembered as one of the most original guitarists of his generation. His riffs shaped Mastodon's sound, but his influence stretched far beyond one band. Countless guitarists cite him as inspiration, not because he played perfectly, but because he played fearlessly. He taught musicians that you don't need to follow the rules to create greatness. His mix of sludge, prog, and southern rock broke boundaries. He wasn't afraid to be messy, to be loud, to be vulnerable, and that's what made him unforgettable. Fans remember the wild stage presence, the cowboy hats, the tattoos, the laughter. But they also remember the emotion in his playing, the way a single riff could feel like it carried the weight of the world. Brent's death is a loss, but his music remains eternal. Every Mastodon album, every riff, every chaotic solo is a piece of him that will never fade. And maybe that's the beauty of Brent's legacy. He lived hard, he played hard, and he left behind art that will outlast us all. As fans gather online, sharing memories and old concert clips, one thing becomes clear. Brent Hinds touched lives. His spirit was untamed, his music unforgettable. His loss hurts, but his story reminds us why rock matters. It's not about perfection, it's about honesty, energy, and emotion. Brent gave us all of that. He wasn't a polished rock star. He was a raw, real human who turned chaos into sound. And that's why, even in death, he feels larger than life. Tributes from fellow musicians have poured in, each one echoing the same sentiment. There will never be another Brent Hinds. His creativity, his humor, his unpredictability, those things can't be replaced. So tonight, somewhere, fans will crank up Leviathan or crack the Skye. They'll hear Brent's riffs roar through the speakers, and for a moment, he'll still be here. Brent Hinds may be gone, but his music ensures he'll never truly die. His guitar still speaks, and it always will. Goodbye, Brent. The world is quieter without you, but the echoes of your sound will never fade.